Hi, my name is Shahryar Shaghaghi. I'm Chief Information Technology Officer for Quantum Exchange, which is one startup company that I recently started with. And we are focusing on solving critical infrastructures organizations as it relates to the threats of quantum computers, which are the next big generation of computing that we'll expect to see soon. And it's an exciting area because, as I'm kind of wrapping up my many years of experience coming from working with great organizations such as Anderson Consulting or Accenture or Deloitte Consulting as a partner, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and also Citigroup. I feel like all those years of experience have contributed towards where I'm at today to be able to really leverage all that experience and do something really interesting. At the same time, I always love to give back. So I've been teaching at Columbia University, Enterprise Risk Management as a graduate program, and I've been working on teaching and developing the curriculum for them in the areas of technology risk. So I started, at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University back in the 80s. In aerospace engineering, and right in the middle of my program, it was early 80s when aerospace industry was not doing that well, and computers were starting to pick up. So I actually picked a few computer classes, programming classes at Riddle, and I really got interested in it in a way that I actually started working in a computer lab as a lab assistant, grading as a grader for various instructors at the school. And then even while I was still at school, I got my first job with NASCAR as a programmer. Actually, I wrote some of the early codes of calculating the qualifying points for various types of races. So I kind of focused more on technology. I got my undergrad in computer science, and then after a few years of working in education environment, as a matter of fact, helping with either teaching or building out data centers, writing applications to do online registrations. I ended up really passionate about technology, and when a master's degree in computer science, or actually software engineering, was offered at Riddle, I was one of the first students that signed up and graduated from that program. And once that degree was obtained, I was able to actually open the door to many different larger, more sophisticated organizations that ended up landing me at Anderson Consulting or Accenture of today. Career progression and career path perspective, I think, as much as we can plan for it, but there are so many different variables and unknowns, I would say, that would change the game. Early in my career, after I got my master's degree from Riddle, I was almost starting a software development lead role with TRW Aerospace, but immediately through some situation, I ended up picking up a senior management role with Anderson Consulting, which exposed me to so many different large technology transformation initiatives and programs. And that kind of was my first 10, 15 years, kind of moving up the ladder in various degrees in terms of a scale of projects global. I've been to 147 countries, just you can imagine, so many different cultures. So, I was really fortunate to be able to establish my foundation with some very structured and mature organization. And then from there, I evolved into being picked up by various organizations in different roles, different capacities, better opportunities at times. And then ultimately, that's where I've landed. But I think, when you look at your career path, you obviously, as we always say, you follow your passion, aim for what you're looking for. And, you need to be focused, you need to be dedicated, and really start to show you're achieving milestones that not only makes you feel good, but makes your manager and the people that you work with a win-win situation. So once you have that established, it's a smooth ride, and then from there on, it's just a matter of like I said at the beginning, some luck plus your focus and dedication that can drive it to where you're at now. Typical day for me is obviously I love interactions, and due to COVID, we've been limited in terms of travel. I used to travel practically every week, which I enjoy doing, and today we are doing basically a lot of online Zooming. Even when I teach my classes at Columbia, it's the same way, mostly online, although I've started going back to classrooms. But net, you have conference calls with either clients or your team members, some of the partners that we are trying to build integration and partnerships with. So lots of meetings, lots of establishing sort of road mapping of your strategy. My role, my typical day would also turn into something that I need to sit down and focus in terms of, the market, the demand, opportunities that we are working towards solutions, and then trying to connect the dots in terms of developing some sort of a strategic architectural roadmap that defines our product and services strategy in alignment with the upcoming market demand. So a lot of strategic thinking, collaboration, and of course, a lot of virtual happy hours as we're limited to that, unfortunately, at this point. The best in my role, as I have, evolved from a developer or a programmer to where I am today, leading a technology organization, is about really the passion that I've had and obtained over years in technology. And I guess I'm fortunate to be in this area because we've been living through technology transformation over the past 15, 20 some odd years. So I really enjoy my job because my focus is all about driving value. I guess I learned those from consulting. Every day I went to work and I was kind of looking at the ways they're driving value for their clients. Sometimes it could be as simple as being in a meeting and making some high impact statements that changes the game in terms of their thinking and strategy. And that is $1 million value. And every time I walk back to the parking lot, going to my rental car back in the days that I used to travel practically every week, my thinking was, okay, my cost to the client today was X dollars. Did I add that much value? So you really always need to think about, what value you drive. So that's really good. I mean, it could be at times frustrating and difficult. Sales is not easy, and as you grow up and you become more senior in your role, you end up selling. Doesn't matter if you're back office or front office. The fact is, you always have to sell in your life, and that's the point that sometimes you will have to come up with ways to really drive the sales into something that you enjoy doing, rather than just trying to sell or push through the ideas. So some of the challenging aspects of my role. And of course, the other aspect, I would say, if I had to take a step back 25, 30 years that I'm in the business now, is life balance. I guess, when you focus in your job and you really are driving hardcore, you will realize that, from a life balance perspective, you may lose some of that. And although I took Stephen Covey's training early days of my career, but a lot of those concepts are not as easily implementable. So, working for large organizations throughout the course of my career, and now I decided to join a startup for the first time ever. The next step for me is to really make this a success story, because my role in this context of a startup is to either get us to a position where from a market valuation perspective we are attractive to organizations that ultimately would be able to look at us as a potential acquisition or taking it to public. So it's a new experience for me, but leveraging my relationships and my peers and my colleagues' relationships in terms of getting in a marketplace, really being able to, as I mentioned earlier, addressing the problems of quantum computers as it relates to the threat landscape and cybersecurity. Those are things that I think, it's a learning experience for me because it's a new area, but at the same time, I'm really excited because I think that, this is probably one of the final chapters of my journey, and I'm really looking forward to it to make it to the end. So, reasons that I've had a good run from a career perspective is the nature of my job, as many years of consulting, interacting with clients at all at all levels, has been able to really create a great relationship and networking for me, and it doesn't matter how good of a job you do and where you land. There are a lot of politics that you have to maneuver around and really understand. Obviously, your performance and ability to drive value, as I said before, it's the name of the game, but you always have to also have a good set of relationships at all levels to be able to leverage those relationships. I think throughout my career, these relationships have made a huge difference in terms of creating awareness or identifying opportunities that they will be able to open the door for me. But on top of that, some of these relationships could also be your mentors, because I think throughout my career, I've been fortunate enough to have amazing mentors that have helped me and guide me towards in the right direction. So that has been really good. And then, like I said before, giving back, be a mentor to some of the next generation of talents that you're trying to help grow. And that is also very self-rewarding. So net relationships are everything as you move up the ladder in a corporate world. In terms of entering the field that I have been working in, which is technology transformation, with focusing in the last 10, 15 years in risk management, cybersecurity, data privacy. The area is obviously very demanding because it's constantly evolving. Even at Embry-Riddle, I've been working with advisory boards, both with the engineering school as well as business school, to bring my experience from industry and share those learnings with the platform. I feel like once you start to plant a seed in an area that you really enjoy early on, you'll be able to really identify the path that you'll go based on what we discussed. I think majority of the focus should be, setting up some milestones throughout your journey, and not 15, 20, 30 years from now, because that's almost impossible to predict, but something that is measurable and you're able to really check the box, on a occasional basis. But don't, just like flight school and flying, there's always going to be deviations to the original flight plan. So, expect those deviations and have a pretty solid change management process established in your mind to be able to really manage those changes that are coming your way, and drive it to the way you'll end up. I think throughout the course of your career, you'll really enjoy what you'll accomplish, and it's a stone, but it's really rewarding. And like I said, follow your passion, keep an eye on your networks, keep growing your networks, have some great mentors, and I think you'll be just fine. And good luck with everything.